Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100.
Good evening, and welcome to the Halloween edition of Lost Signals Discusses the AFI Top 100. I am Chris Morgan, here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
King Kong playing ping pong in Hong Kong with his ding dong.
Oh my.
Stephen Ormosi.
I'm here just directing my new feature.
And Scott Thurlow.
Monkey versus white man.
And King Kong hangs dong. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are going to be discussing Maren C. Cooper's 1933 masterpiece, King Kong, which, does anybody have a funny logline?
Wait, before we do that, do we have the AFI number on this?
Oh, shit,
no.
that's right.
We'll put it in the episode.
We'll do it in post.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to put this in post.
I'll try to get it for you in a second, but go on, Chris.
So all right, so any of you listening, we're putting this in post. So, okay. Anyway, does anybody have a funny logline?
Yeah. You've seen the end of this movie. King Kong landed on us.
Indeed.
Indeed. And Jonathan Ian Manzer,
Yes, sir.
would you like to discuss the plot with us?
Director making a movie can't find an actress, so recruits a woman off the street.
I like to say kidnaps a street urchin.
Fair enough.
He convinces her, I suppose.
Pull somebody out of the soup line.
It's debatable, sure.
Where all the best actresses come from. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they go on a boat, Skull Island. It's a big monkey.
It's funnier.
It's bigger than a normal monkey.
Steals the girl. They get the girl back. They capture the monkey, bring it back to New York. It goes on a rampage. The end.
And they kill it.
I must say that this is a violent movie.
Yes. Much more violent than any of us remembered or thought about. Go on.
And for 1933, my God.
Mhm.
Holy smokes. I think it's before they had standards and practices.
Yes.
It might be before the MPAA or whatever it is. Yep.
In fact, when they re-released this later on, they cut out all these violent scenes in it because it was too violent. It is claymation violence in its most fantastic form.
In excess.
Brontosaurus is just stepping on people.
Rampaging.
It's great. King Kong breaks the jaw of a Tyrannosaurus.
Mm-hmm. It's brutal, man.
Yeah, this is actually it's a very impressive action film.
One of the most tense things for me was when he takes that brunette woman out of her high-rise apartment and then just looks at her, realizes it's not the chick he's after, and
fucking drops
her onto the street.
What a metaphor for
50
relationships.
floors below.
In theory, the fireman, I guess, could have saved her, but
No, they did not. She was dead.
she falls
This
into
has
blackness.
no pretense for anyone surviving.
No, what was it? Was it on the island that they not one but two people he squashed right?
Into the mud.
Yeah, it's just they showed him squashing in the mud.
Not only that, one of the guys gets up out of the mud and he stomps him again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's grinding his feet in the mud.
That guy had it the
Drops
worst.
people 50 feet off a damn log.
Yeah, man.
For the
But
go on.
It's impressive, the violence in it, if you will.
And I wouldn't say the narrative is impressive because it's a pretty kind of simplistic tale, Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
When I guess I can go into things, but being driven to your goal regardless of consequence, all of that. But, they're taking a creature out of its habitat, bringing it to display, and it causes trouble. I mean, this is a classic tale.
Yeah.
Animals are going to do.
There is an interesting part of this plot, or the overarching structure of the plot, where I feel like the natural end of this movie when you're writing it would be when they get off the island, but they draw this almost thematic parallel by bringing him back to New York.
Sure.
And then having that whole scene where he escapes and wreaks havoc.
Well, not only that, he is tied. King Kong is tied up in the exact same way Anne, who is the actress, is tied up in the sacrifice.
Yeah, well, he wreaks havoc on New York much in the same way that the
They
white
did
people wreak
upon
havoc
his island.
upon his island.
Yeah,
sure.
Like when they came, So it is like, I think that's a really interesting plot point. Maybe that goes a little more into themes, but I think that it's fascinating that they had a 3-act plot before that part. So they like added an extra act to this movie that in order to tell like the parable that they wanted to tell, I guess.
I guess this is going things because oddly enough, it's really wrapped up in the themes with the narrative here because it's a much smarter movie than I think people give it credit for.
I agree with that.
And because it is going, what you just said is going above and beyond what a normal action film would be, even today by today's standard. That it's being thoughtful about the consequence of the actions of the heroes, and the heroes aren't all that good. Actually, in a lot of ways, King Kong is the hero to this.
Unquote heroes,
and he's incredibly sympathetic when he's being gunned down by the planes at the end. I mean, like the facial expressions on him at the end were really like touching for me. I felt very bad for this creature out of its habitat, where it ruled as king and is now brought back and enslaved for the entertainment of white people.
And the thing is, like, he can't even walk home without being attacked. And it's just like, you've established the island.
You mean in the island, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is he can survive the island. And like, even in his cave, you know, water serpents and all that stuff, you know, come after him. And then he gets to New York. And, you know, and the one thing that takes him down is something he can't, like, he doesn't have pterodactyls shooting projectiles at him.
Sure.
So it wasn't beauty that killed the beast, but machine gun fire.
The military-industrial complex.
The military-industrial complex killed the beast,
as it always will. But
of course, they threw it on Fay Ray. It's like let's blame it on the woman.
Well, not that they're blaming, but you're right. It's somewhat tied into themes. But if we're going to
pretty straight up blame,
if we're going to talk about the narrative, you're right. Like, it's an action movie on its surface, and certainly has action, and perhaps again, as you mentioned, the more intense of it than you think.
It's actually engrossing action too, because they do set up the hunt into. It's paced very well because half an hour in is when the action really starts to ramp up. They've established who all the main characters are. They kill off a lot of people fairly regularly throughout their trek in.
Yeah,
like red shirts, but sure, but their little hunting group, expedition group gets slowly, or not slowly, even like quickly enough picked off, if you will, and then it's like down to the director, what's his name, Denham. And Driscoll, the first mate. But not like, I mean, yeah, I agree that it's probably a better done action movie, especially, of course, because it's one of the most famous ones, like, early on in filmatic history, like, establishing some of this stuff. So I'm looking at a pretty strong 2. I don't know if it's enough for a 3, although I'm not opposed, but I think it's damn solid. It certainly goes beyond what it might look like on paper, like, basically an old pulpy, like, again, jungle expedition, like, story. I'm
giving it a 3 for the return to New York. Because, as Steve actually very smartly pointed out, the fact that they didn't need to have... actually, a traditional script, they wouldn't have that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point.
Because they add this intellectual element to the ending of a giant monster movie, I'll have to give it credit.
That's not a bad argument. Go, Chris.
I agree. I agree with the end. I was going to give it a 3 as well. When I was a kid, every Thanksgiving, they used to show this and Mighty Joe Young. And I always miss the beginning. No,
Joe Young.
Yeah, I know what they are, but I don't remember them being shown.
Well, this wasn't back before you were born, probably. But
big monkey movies. It's a Thanksgiving tradition.
In olden times.
No, but seriously,
like 95 or something.
But growing up, I'd see this every Thanksgiving but I'd always miss like the first half hour. Like, so I'd only see the part where they got on the island to the end. So, like, for the first time in like 15 years, where I sat down and watched it from beginning to end. It's just like I'm seeing how they're like.
Get to see this one
they are assembling things. It's not like a mad dash to get to the island.
Sure, it's fair enough. Like you said, it's paced rather nicely. In that
I was
sense.
really surprised watching it this time and seeing like, oh yeah, it's not like hey, let's get to the island. And I think this is doing this movie is the reason like I chose, spoiler alert, Gajira, right, for the Matsuin is because both are set up the same way, where they kind of it's not a mad dash to get into the money shots, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
As ZP said, that
King Kong money shots.
He's hanging dong.
You got to watch a bunch of people fiddle around and like dials and shit and like explain shit before you get to see any monsters and so forth.
Yeah, speaking of, it did seem like he was setting Ann Darrow up to be in a porno at the beginning when he first recruited her.
I love
she
all
calls
that.
It out too.
Like, she was like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, I love that they didn't shy away from that. Which for like number 41 on the AFI list.
They didn't have the like I said the standards and practices in place to prevent
Is
anything.
this where we're sliding that in? We're number 41 on the AFI list.
It's funny because I actually looked it up while you guys were talking, so I was going to slide it into. But yes, number 41 officially. So
Wait, did you say number 41?
It was number 41 on the AFI.
It's number 41 on the AFI list. Anyway, so I think I'm going to give this a 3, but I have to do a caveat here because like I don't want to give the like super casual racism and sexism a complete slide.
Oh, I'm not.
And I don't know what I guess. Like,
sure. I mean, it's an unfortunate sign of the times,
but I think that I think that it is interesting the way that they structure the plot for this and the social commentary that they're trying to make via the plot points of this movie. And you know, sometimes that gets a little muddled.
Yeah.
And by a little muddled, I mean like fucking racist. But like,
sure.
You know, you can just see the interesting dynamic of what they're trying to go with in a movie like this. I don't remember seeing a movie anywhere near this old that is this
covers
like
all that
reaches
stuff. Yeah.
tries to reach as far as this one does.
I'm going to argue that Frankenstein maybe a little bit, but I think this is even goes beyond that.
Yeah, they're close. They're in the same like era as well, right? Pretty close.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're right. Like, I do like the point you made that, and I'll add on to it as sort of that most people remember like the stuff in New York, right? Him climbing this, like that's only about maybe 20 minutes of the film,
Right?
So like it's like the most remembered part of it, but it isn't like the majority of it.
It's the Hannibal Lecter of this film.
Kind of.
And
So
by
yeah,
step
like,
building is Hamlet.
you're right. Like in a normal adventure, like it would be them leaving the island, we escape the island, and then the end. So yeah, I think for that, and again, like, and perhaps maybe I'll give it credit here, that again, its influence and its reach on pop culture and in film in general as well. I'll bump up to a 3.
And Steve-O, to your point, I mean, discussing this, I mean, we'll definitely get into the sexism, racism later, but, you know,
can't wait.
It's like discussing it as just narrative. You know, it's 3. We can, you know, the 3 for the narrative,
right,
so to speak. We could attack the other stuff.
The aspects of it elsewhere. Yeah, sure. I get you.
That's good.
Okay, so Steve-O, since we're talking to you, or I'm talking to you, I don't know if anybody else is talking to you. Would you like to discuss the themes?
Yeah, so there is. I think we've talked a lot about the themes already, actually, but like there is this really interesting dynamic of what they're trying to show, and like I wish I knew a little bit more about what the writer and the director's actual, what they were trying to do with the themes more, because I feel like there's a lot of. And maybe this is just a mark of a fairly well-made movie that you can draw a lot of themes out of this that perhaps weren't necessarily like what they were going for, or you know, whatever. But
on the forefront of a
you have like a scene where, as we mentioned earlier, you have the scene where Anne is tied up as like a sacrifice,
an offering
to Kong, and then that's perfectly paralleled, where Kong is tied up as a sacrifice to the American people, basically.
To the audience watching it.
Right. There's another part that you mentioned earlier, Ian. I'm sorry if you were going to talk about this, but I want to say it just in case you were going to forget or something, where she is being directed. So the director, Denham, is telling her, like, you know, pretend something's above you, and like,
and you're scared of it,
and you're scared of it, and he's giving her direction and like scream, and like this is so fucking meta because
it is meta as hell.
Because then that's exactly what all the actors in this movie are doing later on, and I'm sorry to steal that from you. You probably would have said it anyway, but I needed to make sure that it got said.
Sure. No, it's when I watched that scene, it was so shocking to me that they broke the fourth wall in a way in a 1933 film. Like, it was such an intelligent critique of what this movie was. And Scott, not to, I'm going to steal your thunder.
Yeah, go ahead. Everyone, it's all still good points for each other. Go ahead.
He brought up earlier that like he's critiquing the fact that I need to find a leading lady for this because Hollywood's demanding it, even though I wasn't intending to have that in there. Like, exactly. How much of this is like it's weird. Like like the first
it's like
30 minutes of this film is kind of a critique of creating movies in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a fascinating like dynamic to me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that. I just thought it was a bit amusing, but it's certainly there. And yeah, it's cool / interesting to think about the fact that like they threw it in this early on in filmmaking, right? So yeah, I think all that's there, and you covered a lot of it. So yes, while there are perhaps unfortunate implications because of the times and the prevailing cultural, societal mindsets in there, like I think that it does do a pretty good job of covering at least the themes that are still clearly there or that they want to, and then we can add on things that perhaps were not intended, but are nevertheless you can extract from the film as well.
What I'm finding interesting about this, and it's one of the reasons you brought up Frankenstein, and I mean structurally I think this is a better movie than Frankenstein, but it would have been so easy in both of these films to vilify the monster. Like, it would have been so easy to then have these people bring King Kong to New York and then abdicate themselves of any responsibility at all whatsoever and make it, which the director kind of does at the end. You know, he tries to wax little poet.
Nah, he's kind of a sleazy douche anyway.
He's but
the whole movie,
but everybody else, everybody else kind of. But the thing is, regardless of what that douchebag director does, the film itself does not portray him as the villain. Everybody else doesn't portray him as the villain. They're, you know, these people are out of their depth. They've never like figured. I mean, like you're sitting here and it's like, yeah, use airplanes, you know, to take them down. It's like their last resort. Oh my God, let's, you know, and you put things in perspective. We're like, okay, at the time that was probably, you know, biplanes were just used in World War I. And I think this actually, considering it seemed like they're making a silent film, was probably supposed to be taken 10 years even before that. So, I mean, it just shows that even when they got to New York, how careless this director was, because everybody else around him, you know, was out of their depth with this thing. And this guy, all he wanted to do was put on a show. He didn't give a shit about anybody.
Fucking P.T. Barnum. Yeah. But no, yeah, I mean, I think that's all true. But
this is a great, really reversal of expectations, especially considering it's such an early film that's already like in 1933 having movies coming out reversing expectations of filmmakers.
So do you guys think that? Like, I feel like this movie really wanted him to be like an adventurous hero.
I don't think so, because he comes
the director?
I mean,
I think Driscoll was the actual like.
Yeah.
Denham. Yeah, Denham.
Right.
Like, he's the one that is always ready. Like, he brags about like he was ready to shoot the rhino.
He seems like you know what he's doing.
It felt like he came off as a douchebag to me, but I felt like they were trying to get the audience on his side.
All right, we're going a little bit into characters now, but I just want to make this point, is that I think that the rhino bit is actually exemplifies his character and why we're supposed to dislike him. Because he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. So the cameraman was a coward for not standing there, because I would have definitely shot him. But later on, you find out that he's not as competent as he actually is. He's willing to sacrifice whatever he needs to in order to get the shot he does.
But he does do that. Like, when Kong is coming at them, he's the only one that throws bombs at Kong.
Yeah, but how many people did he get killed trying to get Kong?
Clearly, he doesn't give it. Like, yeah, that's the thing, though. Like, I think that we're supposed to believe that this adventurous spirit is like a good thing. Whereas, like, now I view it as, like, this guy's an asshole.
Perhaps.
But, like, I think it was supposed to be, like, he's supposed to be, like, kind of a hero.
I think they were very aware that this guy's supposed to be an asshole.
Maybe.
It's tough because, like, I see what you mean, Steve. Like, maybe, like, audiences originally, like, were supposed to get the fact, like, or the film wanted them to think that, yeah, this guy's a good guy and he knows what he's doing, he's competent. But I think there's enough there as well that it sort of hints, like the rhino thing you mentioned, and, like, a few other moments, like, here and there in interactions that, like, he's not quite the hero that he thinks is, and that the film wants you, puts forth to you as it. So yeah, it's a bit of a character thing, but it actually might bleed over to the next question that I also think we'll talk about in a sec.
A lot of it is so intelligent in how it crafts the story, and again subverts what expectations for adventure films are, that they might build a character that should be the hero.
Yeah.
And it just that, no, this is a real spirit of what a dick this guy would really be.
Yeah.
But that's just giving me credit for what I see in other aspects. But you could be absolutely right about that too.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Well,
Oh,
so,
so-
one anyway.
I'm giving themes a 1, though.
Themes a 1.
Okay. And Scott, it's to you with Antagonist.
Yeah, so like again, I was sort of going to segue in because, of course, again the baseline interpretation the film wants you to get is that it's King Kong, the big scary monster, like a prehistoric beast that no one's ever seen before, and they have to make sacrifices to it even on his native island. But also, it's more like, again, I made a joke of it, but sort of half not, half serious, that a bunch of colonizers are coming into an unexplored island and taking the natural resources. Well, in this case, the resource might literally be a 900-pound gorilla. But
I mean,
like,
if you think, oh, sorry, go on.
So what, as you just said, E, I think the film does deserve a bit more credit on like the way it toes the line. Like, even though yes, it's a relic in a sense of the time and era it was made, I think they did have a bit more of like, I don't know, zazz to it. I don't know what fucking word I want. Like, they were a bit more clever about it of slipping things in there. So given all that, I think you could do both. You could say like it's the foreigners coming in to exploit again a certain resource or whatever, what have you, for their own gain, just for capitalistic gain, if you will. And as you mentioned, I did like the fact that he wouldn't have had to kidnap Anne at all if the fucking studios let him make the movie he wanted, with not having to feature a leading lady. So I think it's like, man's greed, like, like again, exploiting nature and ruining untapped, untouched wilderness. But then, of course, you have the actual monster doing his monster thing and stuff. So it's sort of both to me. So with having said that, I'll throw it out there. Okay,
I was gonna say it because I'm going on I'm not including King Kong in it. I'm totally going on the colonizers and Dunham. Was his name Dunham?
Yeah.
Because one thing that this did is King Kong, every step of the way to his home, is showing that he is king. They've taken him out of there, so all those natives on that island don't have a protector. They may have sacrificed, a woman to Kong, however long it was, but he was protecting them. Like they destroyed the ecosystem of this island.
Run by dinosaurs now.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are dinosaurs that are willing to kill even though they were herbivores in actual history.
Yeah.
But how sympathetic they make King Kong at the end tells me that they were playing a fast one here. You're supposed to think he's the monster until you get to know him, and he's not the monster. It's the Beauty and the Beast trope there.
Man, in the end, man is the real monster, of course. Like, I say jokingly, but I do think there's more to it there.
It's the audience that's the monster. We're the monsters here. We're the ones who want to see King Kong,
the Roman crowd,
lashed up. Yeah, are you not entertained by this giant monkey?
We're the audience. Sure. All right, here's another meta aspect.
How many of them were complaining about this better be a good show when they were waiting for King Kong?
We're the people that Denham was making the movie for.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But no, I think that is mostly the side that I take. And yeah, I think the film is a bit more clever, more intelligent about it than perhaps is given credit for and is known for. But I think upon this watch, I did notice that for me, it came through, and I'll probably give it a 1 on that front. And yeah, like, of course, maybe more style, but King Kong still looks cool. Like, it's still menacing enough, and with all the other monsters that he's fighting as well. But I think more what the former, what I said, antagonistic force / representation is what I'm going to give it a 1 for.
I think it is, yeah. I guess like it's almost like people in general are just the antagonists. Like human beings are just
as always
fucking shit up everywhere they are encountered,
ruining the earth.
Also, the parallel with that time and place of like the Great Depression and all of that, and like taking out a soup line. Like it's that humans don't treat humans well, let alone giant monkeys.
Yeah,
that is
and
true.
or dinosaurs.
But I did feel the antagonism in this movie for sure, and I think it's well done. So I'll give it a 1 for antagonist.
Cool,
excellent. And that brings me to protagonist. And this is interesting because on the one hand, it might be Dunham, but really it would probably be more Driscoll and Ann.
And King Kong.
Oh yeah, I was going to definitely.
Go on.
No, I was thinking about King Kong too, but I mean, because we do follow him in watching, and this is really where a lot of sympathy from him comes in. That's why I keep bringing it up, is because just watching him, it's just like him going to his lair just kind of puts Anne down and takes care of whatever's, and then keeps going. but like she is the reason Driscoll's following her, and she is kind of like the fish out of water on the ship throughout this whole thing. Literally, you know, and she's on the ship on the island the whole step of the way. She's the fish out of water. So I definitely say that she's definitely on the protagonist.
Or the Kong out of Skull Island.
Or the Kong out of Skull Island.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then Driscoll's kind of like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of like leaning towards Anne being the protagonist on this one.
Like, I think she definitely is one. I think you can sort of count Driscoll certainly to a lesser degree, but still within protagonist. Now, I was going to put Kong as a secondary character, but he certainly has an arc, as you said.
It's weird. It's almost a tale of two movies here. Because you have Anne as protagonist of the first one. Driscoll's almost the Gaston, except we're rooting for him in this. And then King Kong is definitely the protagonist of the New York
part of section.
There.
Yeah,
but,
true.
So, like, it's interesting. I think I'm almost going to put Kong as supporting. I absolutely hate every other character in this fucking movie in terms of their characterization. I really think that they're all pretty fucking awful people.
Even Anne?
Aside from Anne.
Anne is like, oh, you fucking hate me? Oh, I'm swooning over you.
She's a
like,
1.5
character.
Yeah, she is not good either. Like, I don't think that anybody in this movie is good. I think that Anne is, I don't even know. Like, I was trying to think of this before when you were like, oh, maybe this is like a meta version of what Cooper was actually thinking when he was making the movie. He like didn't want a leading lady, but they forced him to have one. But he makes her like just kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And
she has some agency, but not a lot.
Unless this is what he thought about
Not
Hollywood
really.
actresses.
She gets carried around the entire.
Nah, but like,
yeah, exactly. Like,
I have one thing to say about her.
I think
so
I'm going to give
done.
protagonist a 0 because I don't like Kong is a protagonist for maybe 15 minutes of the movie, and he is easily the best. But like, I don't think I'm going to give him protagonist
full credit.
Credit on this one. And that being said, I don't like any of the other characters in this, and that means I can't give them good points.
I mean, you don't have to like them. You're just saying they're not good characters, anyways.
I don't. I just don't think they're good characters.
I mean, there's one thing I noticed that like, it's if they'd done gone the other way. So, for example, Anne is, for the most part, excited. She's like, I can't wait to go on. Like, I want to go on land. And like, no, if she was like, oh, I'm not going. I'll stay in the boat. I want to be safe. Like, I think that would have been even worse. Now, yes. I agree. She had some pretty terrible characterization to her character.
She had to be on the island to get kidnapped.
Right, I understand. Like, for plot purposes.
No, she didn't. She got kidnapped off the boat.
Well, that's only because she went to the island first.
I'm just saying. She didn't have to be. They didn't kidnap her on the island.
But the funny thing is, if Dunham wasn't there, he's like, hey, let's get a shot. And, like, basically, he alerted the natives to him. You know, she would never have been kidnapped. So
a lot of people make bad decisions, including King Kong in this film.
That's correct.
I agree with that, of course. So
like, don't chase blonde women, or you'll get bombed.
Yeah,
this is how it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Like I do want to put Anne into protagonist category. Certainly not Dunham or Denham, whatever his fucking name is.
Just think of my jeans.
Sure, and just go again, just to some extent, and like Kong to like the latter like 20 minutes or whatever you just said. I think that's about right. So, but to me, I think they like all sort of combine just enough for a 1, but I totally understand the 0, Steve-O. So I think I might give them like a softer 1, but just because like 1/3 almost, or like a combination of those 3.
A tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme, Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
And King Kong, bam, done. 1.
All right.
That's pretty good too.
I agree with you.
I like that angle.
I was like, sitting here, the more I thought about it, if you, Anne's the protagonist, and then Anne and Kong are the protagonists, and then Kong becomes the protagonist. So I agree with you, Ian. I'm giving it a 1.
I like that way of
and by the way,
too.
Belle was a much more fleshed out character than Anne was.
That's true. In all her, what's that thing?
Do not start singing songs in Mutant Beats. That's what you're gonna do. But anyways, let's move on to whatever's next.
Ian, would you be our guest and talk about the secondary characters?
Be our guest. Put our service to the test. Casual racism is a big supporting character in this film.
Is it a character, or is it just like there throughout?
Well, a lot of the characters are casually racist.
All right, that's fair. Or they're casually racist. The fiction.
Both. But I could see the natives being almost a parody, but the Chinamen on the boat, and I'm using that term specifically.
Dude, please.
It's not a preferred nomenclature.
No, this is intentional.
It is a very offensive. I think you, Scott, said it outside that you thought he definitely had a Brooklyn accent, and they're like, no.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Chinese.
they did. They obviously did not get an
like,
actual.
You have to do a Chinese accent. It's like, I don't know how.
Person of that descent.
Like, just say me
to play this role. Yeah.
Oh, was that you who said that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Overall, though, I really like Denham as a terrible character, but I think overall, whether you're dealing with the skipper,
Gilligan,
Yeah.
most of the other characters are just
they're just background noise.
Background things, and there's a lot of characters who are just there to die. And actually, I really dislike when they have a big group of characters and then they kill almost all of them in one scene.
Like, what was the fucking
Whether
point?
it's Jurassic Park 2, I believe, or Lost World, where they just kill off half the cast in one scene. It was and they do this in this one, so I'm going to give it a 0 for.
So I mean,
but mostly for the racism.
Yes, I'm definitely like backing up. Like it's unfortunately a depiction there, and I'm not going to support it, obviously. But the one thing I was sort of struggling with is like Denham's character is an interesting character. Now he's not a good guy, but he doesn't really have an arc. He starts off as like a self-promoting asshole and ends up as a self-promoting asshole.
He's a one-note piece of shit.
So like I kind of like the portrayal, but that doesn't mean it's a good character. So I think I'm gonna piggyback on E's ideas and probably give it a 0 here for the characters that are left to fall in the secondary. And yes, I certainly think that a lot of them, at least a majority of the ones you mentioned, just again, unfortunately happen to be like background dressing and not really characters unto themselves.
I'm going to see that. I'm going to see your 0 and double down on it and say Driscoll, the more I think about it, is actually more useless than I thought, because I mean, he is how Anne gets off the island, but really all he's doing for this whole thing is just chasing the two protagonists.
Kind of, yes. I mean, I can see what you mean, yeah.
Actually, it's really funny now. The more I think about it, he's more of a plot device than like Anne is.
Well, again, this movie sort of subverts. It switches at that point.
So I'm gonna give supporting a 0.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think if there's a good spot to give a 0 to, it's this one, and the way we cut out the characters.
Steve, this is interesting because you put King Kong in this one.
I believe that I have King Kong as a supporting character, so I think I have to give it a 1. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about this before, and I wasn't thinking about King Kong being a supporting character, and I was like, the most interesting supporting character in this movie are the prehistoric beasts, but they don't have enough of an arc for me to really give them a 1.
Background.
I mean, it goes against all archaeology.
That we know now at the time.
Yeah, it's like it's a claymation. It's like, no, dude, I made this model. It was a labor of love. Let's put this in.
Sure.
The Stegosaurus actually looked pretty decent.
Yeah,
I thought
it was the best looking one.
Hey, listen, I got the Tyrannosaurus has an opposable jaw.
Sure.
Have King Kong show that off.
Kong looked a little fucking terrifying at some points in this film, but no, I mean, there is like Kong has this. He doesn't really have an arc either because he can't so much, but he does have a tragic story built around his Konginess. And
it's a Shakespearean, classic Shakespearean fall of a royalty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean that's a good call.
And he's a titular character as well.
I guess I do have to give this a 1. I was hoping to give it a 0 because every other character is so brutal.
Well, if you would just put King Kong as protagonist like the rest of us, you wouldn't have this problem, Steve. It's your own fault.
All right. So I'm gonna have to give it a 1 for Kong, but I give this movie full marks against for all the casual and uncasual racism and sexism that all of the secondary characters partake in.
Seem to inhabit, yes.
Or
I feel you.
Yeah, or have done upon them. So, all right, I'm going to give it a 1 with that caveat. Is everyone else giving it a 0?
Mostly for Kong, though.
Yeah.
So we basically gave it a 0 for the same.
Not mostly, entirely for Kong. No other character deserves anywhere near 1.
Made it very clear. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, Steve-O, would you like to keep talking about dialogue?
This is an interesting one because I didn't think that the dialogue was very good.
You're darn tootin'.
but I think it was made worse by Denham's horrible as I just mentioned, like one note delivery.
Street
I feel
corner
like
Parker.
yeah.
Come see a Kong here. I got the Kong.
What do you think, Dame? You want to come with me to an
That's how
island?
they spoke at that time.
There's a scene that we were mentioning just before we started this podcast where they're approaching the island and they're talking about it, and they're like, "How do we know it's the right island?" And the guy goes, "Well, if it's," I think Denham goes, "Well, if it's got a mountain that looks like a skull on it, then that's the right island." And Anne goes, "Oh yeah, that's right.
That's right.
You mentioned that. I forgot." And I was like, "What? How do you fucking forget the skull mountain on the fucking island?"
Look, she's a woman on a boat.
Yeah,
She's
man.
overwhelmed.
Apparently, yeah. So I don't think I can give dialogue in good faith. I don't think I can give dialogue a 1, but there are like scenes where they try to, I guess they try to like suss out some of the themes, but there's way too much exposition and it's just not very good most of the time. So it's probably going to be a 0 for me, dog.
Yeah. I mean, like it's tough again.
Callback.
Yes, thank you. It's fairly tough because like the two scenes that we mentioned earlier, the early on when he's like complaining about the Hollywood system, and then doing now pretend like you see something horrible and scream or whatever. Like those were nice touches, but yeah, for the most part, it was just like again A to B drags you along, like, and some of it can be unfortunate implications here and there as well. And so yeah, it's probably like 60-40, maybe even 70-30. 70 like not great to like okay at best. So I'm probably leaning towards a softer 0, but yeah, it's just maybe it's again just on sign of the times of how they talk. Like you said, like just the way you write scripts and dialogue back in 1933 or 4 or whatever it was. But I can't. That doesn't change the fact that it is what it is, and I don't think it's enough for a 1. But good.
The acting wasn't great in this, and the delivery of the dialogue wasn't great. I think Denham had a lot of interesting things to say that he said like Conan O'Brien attempting to mix someone from the 1930s.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really funny.
We just watched something earlier today.
But it was pretty spot on.
But, yeah, so I'm just like, yeah, even if the intent was there, the delivery wasn't
Exactly,
there.
yeah, that's well said.
I was trying to think when we were watching this. I was like, is it done? Is it the dialogue, or is it the fact that I hate everybody in this movie except for like Anne, Kong, the monster? You know, basically, on that boat, the only people I liked were the captain, Charlie, and Anne.
Skipper too.
Well, that's what I meant. Skipper. Yeah. Everybody else was just there. Driscoll, I was irritating, and Dunham. No, the dialogue was not good. Not good.
All right. So giving it a 0.
So I'm giving it a 0. Yeah, I just needed to rip on how much I couldn't stand Driscoll or Dunham. So.
Driscoll's a piece of shit.
Yeah,
He's a real piece of shit. That guy.
And the stuff he was saying was pretty boring.
Yeah.
And Denham only has one.
And Denham only has one line, and he's really redundant too. He says the same things over and over and over. And if we're all giving it a 0, I'll move it to Scott with style.
All right. So yeah, I think it still stands. We mentioned that. Of course, you can tell it's 1930s claymation. What else do you want me to say? However, the fact that it's still like some of the just the general shots, and even like again like. You can obviously tell, of course, and especially, I'm curious to be like, if you're like 12 years old and your parents took you to see this movie when it came out, like, would you be like super impressed? Like, maybe because they were sort of
from
like.
what I understand, people were super
inventing this stuff. Yeah. So like, you gotta give it credit on that front. And again, like, just the general shots and like, yeah, sure, you could tell some of them, a lot of it was like obviously like a set, but even for what they had to work with, I still think they made it work quite well. Mm-hmm. And it goes a long way to like selling you on the idea of like they're going on to like globetrotting adventure, like this secret hidden island, and then Kong's running amok in New York and stuff. So yeah, I think as a movie, as a piece of film, its composition holds up quite nicely, and I'm probably going to give it a 1. And the soundtrack was really good too.
Yeah. Having seen this on like TV before HD and all that, when you see this and like the black and white also helps because there's like a real cool noir aspect to it. Watching it like the other night and just seeing the little transitions, like when he put Anne down, where you could really see where there's that cut where she turned from doll, where he put her down doll, and then they used when he lifted his hands up to have the actress there. There's a lot of neat stuff that they did that even
they're trying their damnedest to sell you on it.
But on HD, you can see it more apparent. But
Sure.
it actually it doesn't say like, oh my god, this looks fake. It also adds to the whole like, wow, that was a really clever gag they did. I mean, I actually appreciated it more, and now I can basically see the seams. I think than I did when I was a kid watching this.
There's a great scene in there where they're on the boat coming up to Skull Island, and I like a good map painting. They have like the birds fluttering in there.
I noticed that.
It's like
good call.
Like I can tell this is composite shots, but it's well done. It's like you're doing your darndest to sell this.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the rear projection and the matte paintings, and then the compositing was great.
Yeah, so it all works. That still works pretty well, like I said. Surprisingly well.
The attention to detail in this film is both narratively and stylistically is very good because he goes above and beyond. For instance, when the kidnapping occurs, why isn't there a guy on watch? Oh, there is a guy on watch. They cut to him just to establish that he's distracted. Yeah. So he wouldn't have seen this happen. Or we're going to show the scene where all the guns fall in the water. Oh, we're going to try to save it here. Like, he goes the director is out of the way to any critique you might put in to like why something didn't work here. He's like, no, I'm going to preempt it with showing why this.
That's a good point. It's a good observation.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that they use what it did when asshole, and I think the director really realized what an asshole Dunham was, because they're like, hey, let's take pictures. Don't you want to do it afterwards? No. Let's do it now. Like, he is really so into this thing. He's
got to get his mucking
show
on the road, man.
Audience to see, the paparazzi take pictures of Kong. I mean, the great thing is, so this way you don't have to sit through a whole song and dance and have it. The director, like, as you said, really thought about this. Okay, let's play with what we have and get Kong released at the beginning of this, of the presentation by using, the hubris of Dunham in there. I mean, like, I'm just adding to how really well thought out all these little things were.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I have not talked about style yet.
Good.
I do think that style is one of the stronger points of this. As you mentioned, the soundtrack is really good. There are a lot of neat tricks that they did on this. Like the blending the claymation into the live action stuff was, it's an interesting look at how special effects kind of started off. And I think that this movie was really cutting edge for its, like, super cutting edge for its time. And it probably was incredibly impressive to see. I mean, like, I remember watching this movie when I was a little kid, and I was like, oh, that's, I thought it was cool then. So people, 70 years before that or 60 years before that or whatever. Sure. Not that many. 50 years before that, must have also, or must have even, like, way more. Yeah. Because this is the first time I assume that people had seen something like this, like this epic level of filmmaking. So I really enjoyed that. I think that there's a lot of attention paid to the details in this film, as you mentioned, Ian, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
Yeah, man.
All right. And that comes to me with recommendation. And I sure as you're darn tootin' I recommend this thing. Yeah. No, it's a great film. It holds up. Like I said, I've seen this thing since, as Steve-O mentioned, we probably all saw this when we were kids. And it does not diminish. It is, there's a reason things like King Kong and Godzilla are still relevant today, is because, you can see the love and the care and attention to detail they put in.
And the white guilt.
Oh, yeah. What? Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's more white guilt now.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I don't think Marin maybe planned for the white guilt, but we got it now. But no, I think that narratively, thematically, and stylistically, this film really holds up. So, yeah.
It's still impressive, and it's shockingly, like, modern in a certain sense of just how violently adventurous it is.
Yeah, I like that. I like that phrase.
Yeah, because that's fucking...
It's shocking. And I was doing homework while sort of watching this film, and I actually put down my homework and watched the film because it was entertaining. Maybe it drags a little bit during the expedition into the thing, but they
slightly
attempt to throw in as many cool battle scenes as they can in the shortest amount of time possible. But it all works really well. Like when Kong is crashing through the gates to get Anne back, and all of the natives are fighting against Kong, and just appreciating the artistry of the details and like how. Like he set up shots to have like he's saying live action with claymation with matte paint. Oh, it's really clever.
Yeah.
Go on, Steven.
I will say that I think that I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Chris. I think that the perfect time to see this movie is when you're kind of a kid, or like 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, like around that age, because. Like watching it now, I feel like I'm trying to like take it apart and like analyze it. And I had a more
sort of just.
I feel like I used to
it.
watch this with my dad every once in a while when I was like younger, because it would come on like WPX 11 or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And like those were like that was like a good time.
I remember it.
Like watching those old movies with my dad was a good time because he really enjoyed it, and like I had fun with it. Like watching it now, I'll say this: like I enjoyed watching this movie again. If I didn't see this movie again for the rest of my life, it wouldn't be a huge loss for me. I wouldn't really care. But that being said, I would recommend watching it at least once, and I would recommend watching it when you're younger. I think that's when. Like,
would you recommend showing it to your kids?
Yeah. So like. The weird thing is, like, I feel like I would watch it with, if I had kids, or if I were ever going to have kids, which hopefully not. I would watch it with them, but I feel like I would have to have a discussion with them afterwards about like being racist isn't cool, and like being sexist isn't cool, you guys. But yeah, like I think that it would be. I think that it's just like a fun adventure, and like when I was a kid, I had more of a sense of like, oh, I love a good adventure. As opposed to now, I'm like, what's the messaging behind this,
Sure.
So, I'm going to give it a 1. And
call it there. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely recommending it. Yes, it's number 41, so I think that's probably about right on the rough range of the AFI. Yeah, it's still, again, its influence can still be seen to this day, and it still holds up. And like we started out with, it's sort of shockingly modern at times, like in a way that most people might not think of it or remember it to be. But it's still totally worth it, as you said, Steve, at least once, and it stands. So yeah, it's one of the great classic American films, and it's still fucking solid, monster movies and so forth. But yeah, for all the reasons that we laid out, now granted, like you said, it has its flaws, it has its shortcomings in terms of some of its messaging and some of its portrayals, but nevertheless, for what it is as a film, as an piece of art in the medium, I think it's worth it. So,
and this is I'm going to respond to something Steve said, and it's not a critical, but I'm glad that there's. This is one of those times where I'm glad this AFI exists, because you said watching it as a kid, and I'm like sitting here thinking about like with regard to video games and movies. You guys were born during the 80s. I was born during the 70s. I think, and then the 90s, there was this resurgence. I'm like wondering if you guys were in the last generations that could really appreciate this, and somebody like my nephew's age would see this and be like, oh, who's has CGI in their head, who like, even for you guys who would appreciate like a 16-bit or 48-bit game, the graphics may be too. So I hope that somebody from our generations or generations do show this to their kids and are able to talk about it,
sure.
Not just to point out the racism and, say that's not cool, but to have an appreciation for this, to be like, this, without this, there would be no Jurassic World.
The charm of claymation is timeless.
Yes.
I think that might be true.
Yeah. And if you don't believe it in terms of video games, go play Clay Fighter.
Yeah. No, but I'm just drawing to what you're saying, because that got me thinking about, I really hope people have kids do show this to them.
It's an interesting angle, you're right, because if it's somewhere approved, you might not be familiar or like understand, or even if not understand, appreciate where its origins were. So
like, look at, I'm just gonna Invaders from Mars. Burton wanted to use claymation. They talked him into using CGI, that you can make CGI look like claymation. And then I got the guy who did James and the Giant Peach and those movies.
Right.
And he did Nightmare Before Christmas, even though Burton gets credit for it. He still insists on using claymation.
Sure.
And he also did Coraline. So I mean, I'm glad that there are people still holding on to this. I think
cool.
it's still something to be appreciated and marveled at today. Look, Kubo and the Two Strings.
I agree. Yeah.
None of that was CGI.
You're right. Yeah. Cool. Good call.
So
Practical shit.
Yeah. So King
Ian,
Kong.
were you going to say something else?
Still definitely good.
Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't cut you
Yeah,
off.
I think we're good once you
All right.
give us
Well,
numbers.
Well, I think we, for very different reasons, all gave it an 8. Steve-O did not count King Kong as protagonist, so he gave that a 0, but he did count it as secondary character.
So he was forced to give secondary one.
So he is forced to give secondary character 1 because
Bad move, Steve.
he refused to conform. None of us agreed that dialogue was very good, but we all did remember that this was number 41 on the AFI list.
We did.
If there's one thing that happened in this,
I
podcast,
100%
we all
remember that.
what number it was.
But anyway, all of us giving it an 8 gives us an aggregate score of 8.
Which I think
Which
is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Which is
It's
what I would have.
It's what it
yeah.
deserves.
And
I
it
agree.
certainly deserves to be on the AFI.
Yeah.
Because it's
100% as well.
for how it changed film.
Yep.
I agree. All right, gentlemen. If there's nothing else to say, I've been Chris Morgan here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Big monkey. It's funny.
Stephen Hermosi.
I have to go back to Skull Island to refill my Skull wine glass.
And everybody's favorite colonizer, Scott Thurlow.
And I'm going to steal that wine glass from you when I get to that island. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.